sexualized, threatened, mental, emotional, and psychological abuse. A cry from the ashes. Today, we're going to talk about the journey of Angel Reese, the NCAA champion from LSU, the All-American, but she hasn't been treated like the All-American girl. There's a lot that this young lady has journeyed in an effort for her to do and fulfill her passion, which is to play basketball. Most of us this week heard about some of the trauma that she has been enduring since winning the NCAA championship in 2023 against Iowa. I could sit here all day and give this young lady accolades, but I'm going to do that because she's deserving of just that. So much attention has always been placed upon some of the things that she's done on her journey that have been deemed negative or unsportsmanship-like. But I want to give her her roses now and give her an opportunity to smell them, hear them, observe them. Because she has been the subject of attacks, many, many times threatened. These are her words and not mine. And we also, if we look at her legacy in collegiate sports, and we look at particularly the 2022 and 2023 year and compare that to even this year, we're able clearly to determine that the mental, emotional, and psychological abuse that she's enduring has traumatized her and has also adversely impacted her game. I look at her points per game have gone from 23 points per game to 18.6. The minutes played per game have dropped 2 to 4 minutes. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're on that dance floor, 2 to 4 minutes off the floor matters. When we look to her assist, her field goal percentages, all have taken a loss. Has it been to the extent that it cost them this year? I won't go as so far as to say that, but there is definitely something to be said when you go from 18.6 points per game and you are at 23. The Elite Eight. She's beyond being elite. She is a champion. She is indeed a champion. A lot of emphasis has been placed on Caitlin Clark. There's no doubt Caitlin Clark represents the Big Ten, Iowa, that she's done very well in that space, but she's not a champion as of date. She has not secured what Angel Reese has secured. She has not journeyed the path that Angel Reese has journeyed. Angel Reese happens to be the benefactor, if you will, of the transfer portal, in that she was able to come from Maryland and play at LSU, and in her very first year, take that school to a championship win. It had been unprecedented then or now. And with all the accolades that Caitlin Clark is deserving of, yes, Caitlin is deserving of the accolades to which she receives, but there are many that she's not. You see, the NCAA, along with the sports media and many others respectfully, have refused to acknowledge that Caitlin Clark is not, in fact, the leading scorer in NCAA history. That goes to Francis Marion University's Pearl Moore, who scored 4,061 points. That has not been touched, not by Caitlin, not by Pete. And yet, while networks want to acknowledge Lauren Taylor's accomplishments at Francis Marion by asserting that she is, in fact, the leader rebounder for D1, D2, and D3 schools, they will not give Pearl Moore the same respect and the same due. Why? Because as one sports journalist said to me when I reached out to USA Today, members at ESPN, CBS Sports, and a host of other outlets to inquire why Pearl Moore's story was not told, one wrote back and said to me, well, the divisions were different then. The competition was different then. So if we're going to live by that standard, then the Big Ten is different than the Big East and the SEC and the ACC, right? But we've never looked at it through that lens. And we know that because when we look to our esteemed sportscasters at ESPN, they've covered the the successes of Francis Marion University through the lens of the leading rebounder for Division 1, 2, and 3 being Lauren. Well, how does that connect us back to Angel Reese? Because despite Angel Reese's success as a champion, an All-American, attorney MVP, coaches All-American, first, second, third team All-American, the SEC and the Big Ten All-Defensive Player, the International Basketball Federation AmeriCup 2023, and AAU, Amateur Athletic Union, Elite for Nike. Despite all of this young woman's accolades from high school through college, the only names that we're continuously hearing is Caitlin Clark. Why? Why is there such a disparity in the reporting between these two women? And let me be clear. These two women don't have beef with each other. Caitlin Clark does not have beef with Angel Reese and vice versa. She doesn't. But the media has done a horrible job, respectfully, of allowing these two women to be as competitive as they are without the stigmas that have been attached to Reese when she's engaging in her form of sportsmanship. She's a competitive beast, and I say that respectfully. So, when she decides that she's going to say, "You can't see me," something WWE John Cena used to do, she's demeaned for engaging in that activity. She's labeled as unsportsmanlike. But yet, she was part of the most watched game in the NCAA women's basketball college history. People say, well, that's because she was playing against Caitlin. That can't be true. No, it was because of Angel. Because despite Iowa's success, they have never been able to garner that amount of ranking or numbers ever again. And when we look at what the numbers are for LSU, they're huge. That's not to imply that Iowa can't bring them out, because we know they do. But the most watched game in women's college history was a game that was played by Angel Reese. Now, why does any of this matter? It matters because the mental state of our athletes is as critically important as their athletic performance. And when we have a young woman like Angel Reese cry out from the ashes, the suffering, the pain, the trauma that she has endured simply because she has a love for the game, that's a problem. When we have a media that wants to ignore everyone else's stats, like Tamika Johnson's assist record, the emphasis is not on how successful Tamika Johnson was with 136, 140 rebounds. That now is the record of Clark. But when Tamika had the record at 136, nobody was talking about it. Hold Claus has the highest number of points ever scored at 479. That's the most points scored in an NC game, collectively. No one's talking about that because they're too busy wanting Caitlin to surpass her. When we look at the highest and the most points per game, Lori Berman at 50, Cheryl Swoops at 47, Jane Appel at 46, and Kelsey Mitchell at 45. But everybody's talking about Caitlin Clark at 41. What's going on here? When LSU beat the pants off of Iowa, we said it was a quote-unquote signature win. That's how the media downplayed it. Tables are turned, and the 94-87 win, only a difference of 7 points. And the world wants us to be reminded that Caitlin scored 41 points, 15 or so rebounds. Let me make sure I get her stats right because she deserves that too. I know it was 41 points. Okay. So we got her at 41 points and 17 rebounds for that game. I want to make sure the young lady gets her due. But overall, she's 32 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, and 9 assists. But she never had a chip and never won a tourney. But in the very same year that Angel Reese won 2023, the Associated Press Player of the Year was Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark. Can you remember that? Caitlin Clark. Honda's Award winner of the year. John Warden, Nesbitt College Player, USBWA National Player, Wade Trophy, James Sullivan Award. All of that went to Caitlin Clark, the runner-up, not Angel Reese. So when people are wondering why this young lady is crying from the ashes, look at the mental, emotional, and psychological abuse that she's endured. But I want you to listen to something else. We keep talking about how they play D. Well, here's a D word: disparity, discrimination, to discourage this young woman from going forward. How can we promote, support women's sports, but at the same time demand equity and equality when all the while many of us are engaged in disparity and discrimination? This fight for the great white hope. When these two young ladies, they don't operate like that. They don't. I remember Rebecca Lobo. Y'all know who Rebecca is. She got a chip in 1995. She played 97 to 2002 in the WNBA. And she's now an analyst at ESPN. And she made a comment one day in which she compared not Angel Reese, who has the chip, by the way, but she compared Caitlin Clark to being the best player in the history of the game. Quote unquote, the greatest player. How can Caitlin Clark be the greatest player and you don't have a chip to show for it or attorney? You just have points, right? And you're in the Big Ten. Never played the SEC, never played the ACC, nothing. Just you're in the Big Ten, right? Now, is that the end all be all? No. But if you're going to profess that she's the greatest, what's the backup to that? Just the fact that she's a leading scorer? Caitlin was the leading scorer for 21, 22, and 2024. She's the leader in assists 2022 through 2024. But what has she been able to show for that as the team leader? Not a chip, not to date. So let's talk about that. When I watch what the media and officials did in the West Virginia game, I was shocked at what the media and the officials were willing to do to ensure unto themselves that Caitlin Clark will win a chip this year, since she's bypassing the fifth year to enter the WNBA. I called it out then, and I'm going to discuss it now. There was an interview that Sports Illustrated did with NBA legend Allen Iverson. Most of you equate Allen Iverson to the Philadelphia 76ers, and you're correct. But AI is from Virginia. So when Sports Illustrated interviewed him and asked him about what he thought about Caitlin Clark, I was astonished. Not simply because if you look at the video, you'll understand why he should not have been interviewed at all. It's clear they were more interested in an interview and information and not his image, respectfully. But the outcome of that was to ensure that they could get this native Virginian, who's an NBA legend, to be able to give accolades to Caitlin Clark. And that's what they did. And that's exactly what they tried to secure. It was not an interview with an emphasis on LeBron, giving shouts out to him and Stephon Curry as being the most influential in the NBA. No, it was, we want to have on the record this Virginia native, an NBA legend, tell the world, in his opinion, Caitlin Clark is the greatest and the best. That is very concerning in light of the fact that he's the vice president of Reebok, which is a brand for which Angel Reese is under. But I don't think in that moment that he understood what he was being used to do. When you look at that comment and the push by the media and all the outlets that took that story and ran with it, and you couple that with how that game was officiated and the number of points in which Iowa was able to attain because of that officiating, I'm not foolish. I know that in many games, your officials might make dumb calls. This was beyond that. This was enough to question the integrity of the NCAA, the integrity of how that game was officiated, and whether or not that win against West Virginia will forever be tainted. At best, Caitlin played a subpar game along with the rest of Iowa. But for that win, there would have never been a matchup between them and LSU. And so why is everyone angry? Why was everyone threatening Reese? Was it enough to get into her mind a headspace to get rent there so that they can control the outcome of the game? When people start to compare Caitlin with Angel, we are reminded of the days that go as far back, for those of us who may not have lived it like myself, but have researched it too, of Nancy Lieberman when she played, and Rebecca Lobo with Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops. Now we know Cheryl got a chip in 1993, but then you look at, she played 97 to 2011 in the WNBA. Lisa Leslie played 97 to 2009, but all of them was rocking it out with Rebecca Lobo. And all of them played as part of a sisterhood, a sorority type. We say for the NBA, it's a fraternal order, the same impact. But the media and others were doing the same thing, pitting these black women against these white women when they collectively have a sisterhood and a love for each other, a respect and admiration for each other and the game until they become analysts. So when Rebecca Lobo says that Caitlin is like Diana Taurasi, now if y'all know Diana, she is a bad mama jamma, okay? Girl was bad, hot, burning, flame, riz, and any other name, right? She was all of that. She gonna get her props. She deserve them. She got 3 chips from 2002, 2003, 2004. She was drafted first round, number 1 in the 2004 draft. But her accolades do not measure, or let me rephrase that, Caitlin's accolades, respectfully, do not measure to that of Diana's. At best, you would look for that in Angel Reese. But while we're so busy sexualizing her, we are demonizing her. And so many young African-American girls are already subject to sexualization and adulteration. We don't see them as young girls at all. We really don't. But behind all of the makeup, behind her fancy clothes, her nails, she represents well. And she cleans up very well. But there's a young lady behind all of that. There is still a young lady behind all of that. And I think oftentimes the media forgets that and the fans forget it. And I don't think, with all due respect, that the emphasis on whether Caitlin wins is because y'all want her to be the best player, or if it's because y'all want a great white female player to dominate in this space. See, I could say these things. A lot of them can't. Let me repeat that. Is it that you want her to be the best player because she's able to do so? Or is it because you want to have a great white female to dominate in this space? And I think it's the latter. There is such a fight in this space. She's become like the Larry Bird of that generation. When Larry Bird and McHale and them played and dominated in Boston, it was always that matchup. Let me give you that history, right? From the Magic Johnsons and the Isaiah Thomas's generation, even when Bill and Beard played with Detroit, we saw it then, right? Fast forward, we see the same thing with Luka. This push of wanting to find that great white hope to dominate in sports. And it is not sportsmanlike to do it. That's not how those men and women and young adults play out there. They have a love for each other and a love for the game. And we in the media and fans, if you will, you don't want to create that narrative about racism and sexism. This is why it is so disappointing that women in sports, you are as responsible for this narrative that has been created. You are creating this environment that is not conducive to professional or collegiate sports. And it is sending the wrong message. The attempt to break Angel Reese is unconscionable. And we're not going to stand by and let you all do it. Let me repeat that. The attempt to create a narrative to break Angel Reese is not going to happen. We're not going to stand by and let it happen. We're not. You all need to recognize her for what she's done. She is, according to On3, one of the highest paid collegiate athletes in the country at $1 million for her kneel, name, image, and likeness. I did 2 or 3 shows on this subject matter, and Phil Tarim has also written about the kneels. We've been on the front line for years in this space in an effort to work with members of Congress to ensure that players are compensated for their name, image, and likeness. And she's been able to do that. She has a deal with Reebok, Amazon, Bose, Coach. If you don't know what Coach is, it's not the Wells Fargo Coach that you see, but Coach. It's a pocketbook brand. She also has several other deals with Wingstop and Outback Steak, etc. And we know that Caitlin also has deals to the tune of about $900,000. Now, will either one of these women receive the same level of compensation on a professional level? We don't know. What we do know is that the average salary, what we would deem in the NBA as a rookie salary, if you will, for the WNBA is about $78,000 for the first year. So you walk away from that. But will she still be branded or able to brand herself accordingly? I would suspect that she should be able to. I do know that the Bayou Barbie term, which she's identified herself as over the years, and others have as well, has been the subject of much legal conversation. There was a legal matter that ensued. Mattel owns Barbie, quote unquote. That's their brand. That's their trademark. And so the Bayou Barbie in and of itself is not something that I don't think she'll be able to take with her to the WNBA. But nevertheless, that being said, where does this young lady go at this point? We no longer need to compare her to Caitlin because both of these women will be entering the WNBA draft. Will their place? I don't know. But if you were to ask me, it is unequivocally, categorically, should be, always be, that the person with the chip holds that number one spot. So if Caitlin gets the chip and they surpass UConn and they get past UConn, Paige Bucket, oh yeah, that's a different conversation for a different time. But if they're able to do that and then they get past one of the Carolinas, either North or the South, then, we'll see where that goes. We'll just see what happens at that point. But as it stands now, if we were going to go on what the record would hold today, it would be without a shadow of a doubt that the number one pick for this draft should go to Angel Reese. You say, well, why not one of the seniors? Now, that being said, if the Carolinas are going to let go a player this year to enter the draft, then yeah, ideally that might very well be the direction in which that can go, because South Carolina's got like two seniors. You have Camilla, she's a senior, and then Tiana is a senior. I don't know if they're trying to enter the draft or not. I would suspect that they would. They haven't yet made an announcement at the time of this show. So, take that for what it's worth. But if in fact they were and they win, then they have the chip, they have the record, they're the Cinderella stories, then let them go in, right? But if we're talking between these two and the conversations people are having that she's going to Indiana, that's Clark, that is, I know your fiance or boyfriend might be there, but that's not a guaranteed spot for you. So we are not going to allow for our young lady to have a cry from the ashes. So what are some of the things that I'm hoping happens as a result of bringing some of this to our attention? I'm hoping that the media becomes more accountable and responsible in our reporting. I'm hoping, and coverage, if you will. I'm hoping that we are reminded of the fight for the Title IX. I'm hoping that we're reminded of the inequity and inequality that women in sports experience to this day. And let me pause right there. When we look at data and we keep talking about what's going on with the NCAA, with discrimination, and what's going on with women's rights, respectfully, when we look at the data and the numbers, it's Black women that are suffering, not our white female counterparts, okay? Look at the numbers carefully. Even look at the front office and management and coaching positions. You have as many of them going to white males than white females than Black. And the same is true when you look on the professional side. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in this space that we keep referencing for its disparity, discrimination, inequities, and inequality for this thing we call us as women. And I'm saying to my white female counterparts in this space, we got to do better. We must do better. Whether you look at the glass half full or half empty, our goal is not to break either one of these women. It is not for us to be able to showboat and advertise these girls crying because they have been, quote unquote, attacked many times and threatened. It is not for us to engage in this level of abuse with hopes that we break them to the point where they cannot perform athletically so that there could be an outcome for Caitlin Clark later on. And I have to continue to reiterate, usually within the ranks of these women, they don't have these issues. Moriah Jefferson, Sue Bird, Renee Montgomery, Skylar, Sabrina I, they don't get down like this. These Black and white and Asian and Latino women, they play the game as a sisterhood. We don't need to be attempting to create narratives that invoke this type of hostility and violence and communicative threats that Angel Reese has endured. And I can only wish that she had spoken sooner than later, such that this matter could have been addressed head on, early on in the beginning of the season. But let us equally be reminded, her coach has experienced the same abuses too. And enough is enough. So going forward, the media has a responsibility. The NCAA, you bear the responsibility. And part of it has been your refusal to acknowledge the truth of the matter with regard to who owns the leading scorer record. It is Pearl Moore, Francis Marion University. And until such time that you're willing to stand up and say, we got it wrong, and stop living in excuses, denial, and justification with regard to trying to give it to Clark, but then backpedal and give Lauren Taylor the title from the very same school for all of the divisions under the rebound title, the world is watching you. The fans are watching you. When you know better, you got to do better. Mental health is as important to the game of sports as their athletic ability, and their athletic ability will be compromised. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Field to Rim. Angel, you're in our prayers.